Hi, this is Gene Haas, and this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back to your Sunday night with Speed City. We're going to talk some Formula One now. I want to start by saying if you haven't seen the trailer for the new Drive to Survive season coming up, I think we're only about 10 days away from the launch of this season, so check that out. Bob, got fingers crossed. I was talking to Chris Medlin the other day, and he said that he was talking to the folks at Box to Box Films, and they said that the little segment that we did when Gunther dropped what we thought was an F-bomb.
I mean, I would have fucked the whole paddock.
That right there. He said that made it to Netflix. So we'll see. We'll see if we made it to Drive to Survive.
Perfect.
I always wonder if Casey, the producer, will play that on local radio because I guess so.
I think he just did.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, but hey, let's talk some car launches. I'm going to take them in order of launch and start with Aston Martin. And I think the big thing here was they got a new technical director, Dan Fallows. He came from Red Bull. So to me, when I saw the car, actually I saw a comment. Somebody said it looks a lot like a Red Bull car. And I started looking at it, and then people started talking about it, and it actually does look quite a bit like last year's Red Bull car. It kind of looks like last year's Red Bull car with last year's Mercedes front wing on it. But
well, yes and no, I think.
Okay.
I was looking through. There's a guy out there, an Englishman, Craig Scarborough, who goes by Scarabs, Scarabs, and he does very, very nice technical drawings and explanations, kind of like what Giorgio Piola does. And he pointed out that there's a very dramatic departure on the side pods of the Aston Martin from anything else in the pit lane. He calls them water slides. Basically, I think what he's talking about is the upper surface of the side pod air inlets drops dramatically to the rear of the car and basically goes right to the floor of the car. It doesn't stop at the engine or the transmission or anywhere. It goes right to the floor, and there's this huge slide, that's the word, like a playground slide, that goes right back to the diffuser and helps channel the air and all that thing that aerodynamicists worry about all the time. But I think it's kind of clever. It's a dramatic and bold move on their part, and it'll be interesting to see if it works because, as Fernando Alonso said, Lance is going to be a world champion someday.
Yeah, I did see that, and I think my eyebrows just uncontrollably went way up when I read that. I was like, "Oh, okay." I'm not going to trash on Stroll. I was surprised at how many races he's run. He's over 100 Grand Prix now. I just
he's up around 119 or so.
Yeah, something like that.
You saw that same graphic I did about the most experienced Formula One team.
Yeah,
Aston Martin.
Yeah, I was surprised at that. Of course, when Alonso has 335 or whatever Grand Prix, that'll do it for you. In fact, I put that in here. I wanted to click on that because I wanted to show it. And here it is.
Looking at your images, you can't see it from these. Well, you could see it from there to the left and right of the exhaust, where all that dark carbon fiber is. That's where these slides, these water slides, go dramatically down to the diffuser level.
Yeah.
It's really quite something.
Well, it's going to be interesting because just thinking about Lawrence Stroll's goals of to be, a great team and win championships. They've got to get some work done. So, but they've got a new factory coming. In fact, I think they did the launch at the Silverstone factory, the unfinished factory. But they did some minor changes to the front suspension to add some anti-lift. I know the side pods look quite similar, other than what you're talking about, the shape of the pod up high, and the front wing does look quite a bit different from last year too. So we'll see. So, but let's talk about McLaren. That was also on Monday. Aston Martin was on Monday. McLaren was on Monday. I think if I had to say, one of the least impressive, or one of the most disappointing launches was McLaren because, I mean, maybe because it just seemed like to them, they just didn't seem to be very upbeat about their own car. And, they did the perfunctory, wording, but there just wasn't a lot of excitement going on there. So, uh,
Yeah,
would you agree?
I think, yeah, definitely. And I think Lando Norris contributed to that. He made a comment that I don't want a competitive car as much as I want a better behaved car, which I thought was a really weird thing to say. So, I mean, obviously, he and Daniel Ricciardo had a horrible time with that car last year. Lando managed to wring some real performance out of it. Daniel, really never could. And you're right. I think they sound very cautious about this car. I mean, Andrea Stella, the new technical or team principal, said it's going to take years. And this goes back to what you were saying earlier about all the dramatic changes going forward. Technically, it takes time and it takes experience and learning and all the good teamwork type stuff. But they said it's going to take years, but we hope to get back. They want to target the top 4 teams this year, which means they basically would be happy finishing 4th among the constructors,
Mm-hmm.
which is not a bad goal, but it's certainly not something that Ron Dennis and the McLaren of old would have settled for.
Yeah. And I wrote down some things. I heard a lot of talk about being realistic. That's not exactly optimistic. And then team principal Andrew Stella said, and I quote, "Not entirely happy with the launch car, but optimistic we should take a good step soon." And I think I saw something about them potentially doing some changes a few races in that they thought would get them even more competitive. But I think the whole vibe was they're just kind of downplaying their chances this year. I think that was the way it felt. So,
Well, that's, it's one great marketing strategy is to keep expectations low.
yeah, that's
And
true.
then if you do solidify 4th place behind the Red Bulls and Mercedes and Ferraris of the world, then you're doing well.
Yep.
So maybe that's their goal.
Well, I'll tell you, the car itself, the papaya, and the way the Google Chrome logos and everything, the car itself, I really like it. I think it looks great. I think it's one of the best looking cars on the grid, and it obviously is not dramatically different from last year. The livery and everything else. So I just
Right.
think it's a good looking car. But all right, well, let's get another quick break in. I know that's close to back, but then we're going to talk a lot more F1. We got some more teams to break down. We got Mercedes, Alpine, and we'll be back. Oh, and Ferrari. Hello. Back after these messages. All right, we're still live on the YouTubes. Let me look at a couple other things that I wanted to talk about. Oh, $99. I was wondering, I was watching the commercials here in Austin, Bob, during the Daytona 500. They showed NASCAR at COTA because it's coming up at March 26th, right around the corner for us here. And I couldn't remember how much tickets were. And you get a 3-day pass to go to NASCAR in Austin here for $99, GA. So that is about a quarter of a Formula One ticket here at that same facility because they were at $500 or at least $400 last year, depending on.
And what do you get? You've got
GA.
Cup on the program. Who else is racing?
I don't. Let's see. Let's see if they say. I don't know who the. Well, this doesn't say. It just talks about all the ticket price. I'm on the ticket page, but they've got like main grandstand seats. A good example.
What happened there?
Are you there, Bob? I think maybe your connection.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Let me jump on the chat. I can hear you.
There you go.
Okay. I think it just lagged. I don't know who else is on NASCAR. I was on the ticket page of NASCAR at COTA. But yeah.
Am I supposed to be getting commercial on my?
No, Casey said no, you're not supposed to be getting commercial.
Okay. It went away, but I was listening to the commercials there.
Oh, no wonder you're having trouble. Yeah. Let's see. I was comparing the prices, like main grandstand seats, 275 NASCAR. That's a $2,000 ticket at F1. All right, here we go.
Hi, this is Karan Chandok, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back to your Sunday night with Speed City. We're going to talk about the Ferrari car because it launched on Tuesday. And my notes, Bob, say, could this be their year? What do you think about that?
Mm,
I think that just said it all.
no. No, I'm sorry. I'm getting some audio interference in my ear right now. We're talking about Ferrari.
Yes, Ferrari.
Yeah.
I said,
Well,
could it be
if
their
they've
year?
if they've looked the motor problems they had last year, they had so much lack of reliability on the engine side. In fact, after the season, Mr. Binotto, before he left the team, said that they had actually detuned their engines. They were running at less than full power just to maintain reliability so they wouldn't keep taking engine penalties. So if they've got that licked and they have good power, I have no doubt Ferrari can be more competitive this year. Whether they'll win the world championship for the first time since 2008, I don't know. But it's Ferrari.
Yeah. To me, they had quite the opposite of McLaren. They were optimistic. They talked about this complete redesign. That was a comment by the head of chassis, Eric Cardilena. I said that wrong, her last name. Cardilea. They pointed to both aero and mechanical changes in this complete redesign, increased downforce, suspension changes to improve their setup options. They did do a short little 15-kilometer demonstration run at Fiorano, and the whole vibe was that they were optimistic. Leclerc requested a more consistent car, right? And that seemed to be the goal, is that let's fix the engine problems, number one, and let's make the car more consistent, which I think everybody was working on. And of course, everybody, literally every single team was working on getting down to this, 798 kilogram weight limit. And Ferrari talked about that. But let's see, there was, rather than, a lot of the teams made changes that kind of were Red Bull-like. Ferrari they basically followed their same aero template as last year. Like they optimized the intakes, but not some big changes. The side pods were a little smaller, but not massively changed. Front wings, lots of changes there, but not I think those were, I would have to say, lots and lots of tweaks. I wrote on here plenty of unpainted carbon fiber, but I think you could say that about virtually every single car on the grid. But yes, engine reliability is their top priority. And Bob, you probably saw this too on Twitter or anywhere else. There was this rumor starting about a week ago that Ferrari had picked up 30 horsepower and well, how they can't do that? The engine freeze. And I think what this was, where this rumor may have started, was exactly what you said. Is it basically if they can just fix the reliability and then turn the knob back up? They already had the 30 horsepower. They just couldn't use it last year because every time they turned it up, they had engine failures. Because like Leclerc, how many races was Leclerc in the lead? I remember 2 for sure where he was in the lead and the engine exploded. I remember one of them in fire.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely had their share of those sorts of problems. I think the car was fundamentally good. I'm sure they'll want it to be more flexible to meet the conditions of more different racetracks. Last year, we expected everybody to come out. Well, we didn't know, frankly, what they were going to come up with. A lot of teams came up with a chassis that would work well at some racetracks, not so well at the others. And that was everybody, including Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, and so on. I think Red Bull did the best job of rounding off the rough edges on their car. And as a result, they swept those championships. But I think there's still going to be a little bit of that sort of feeling your way along. Teams are talking about upgrades already. That's not a surprise. I'm frankly surprised that more teams have put cars out there, either live or in pictures, and say, that's the car we're bringing to testing. I didn't believe it for a minute. Maybe it's true. We'll have to see. But there are different looks out there. I'm looking at a tweet from the F1 Pro Series that shows the noses of all the cars. The Ferrari, the Mercedes, the Alpine, the Williams, and the Haas have much broader noses than, say, the Red Bull, the McLaren, the Sauber, and the Alfa Romeo and the Alpha Tauri. So, people are doing different things. And it's when they all get together and they're on the track and everybody can see what everybody else is doing, then we'll see the upgrades start to come, because they'll start exploring what the other teams are doing, what the successful teams are doing, and how they're doing it. And then that sort of homogenization that you're talking about will take place. But this is going to be a really interesting test, because there's still a lot of shooting in the dark going on, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, look, we're only the second year into these major changes of the downforce, the complete aero change with all the downforce generated underneath the car. But I mean, I'm just thinking about Ferrari and how quick they look at the beginning of the year last year. I know it's there's so many factors in that. Red Bull probably wasn't really fully up to scratch, but they were so fast. I mean, they came out of the gate. They were leading by, I want to say, 30 points at one point early in the season. So we shall see. Let's see if I have any more notes on Ferrari, because there's that 30. And the dyno runs is what they were saying. They said that because of the dyno time, reliability they're saying, because of all that, the evidence that they've seen, that they've cured it. I would love it. I'm not saying I want Ferrari to win. That'd be great. I'm just saying I would love it if we didn't have such a huge gap from Red Bull back to everybody else. So, and I also feel like our next discussion, these guys will be in it, because we're going to talk Mercedes now, because they launched on Wednesday. I wrote down the actual launch itself, because some of these, like the Red Bull launch, in my opinion, that was miserable. They got off track, and we're talking about other sports. I honestly, I paused it and went back and skipped ahead and just watched what I wanted to about the Formula One car, and even that was not that exciting. But the Mercedes one was nice, short, sweet, well done. Interviews with Lewis, George, and Mick, and I love the addition to Mick to that, and then Toto, and then on to the car. And as far as looks go, the new black car looks, I wrote down mean, aggressive, technical, low, and wide. I don't know if it's necessarily lower and wider than the others, but it just looked that way. Maybe it was the camera angle or the colors, but I thought it looked great. What about you, Bob?
Well, I did, again, with the caveat, it was that ride height. You mentioned the car looked lower. It was designed originally, we are told, to run lower, very low to the ground. But that's what created the porpoising problems. To cure it, they had to raise the ride height. So the car was basically being asked to do something it was never designed to do, and they had their problems. They recovered to some extent before the end of the season, but I have to assume that had to be priority number one coming into this year, was finding a ride height where the aerodynamics of the car would work. As I said, not just at Silverstone or wherever, but on as many different tracks as they could manage to make it work well on.
Yeah, and I wondered, before it came out, I was thinking, are they going to change this minimal side pod? And they really didn't. I did.
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the same. And they argued that it wasn't. They still believe in that. They did say, however, Toto Wolff said the side pods will change, not very soon. So I don't know what that means. It's almost like is it, or do you still believe in it, or do you not still believe in it, because they're going to change? But have you?
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, it may just be a step. Mercedes thinking down the road about what they want the car to eventually morph into once they've proven or disproven the this side pod or whatever you want to call it, the skinny side pods. They're a little bit wider than they were, so I think they are still committed to that. And I think it was Toto Wolff who said it. He said, we think this radical side pod configuration was not the cause of our problems. It was something else, more specifically that ride height thing that I just mentioned a moment ago. So, Mercedes will probably be more formidable this year than they were last year. And you got to know the drivers are going to be more fired up.
Yeah. And there was a single word that I heard Total Wolf talk about, and I was thinking to myself, this is strange because um, he was let me see what's this. Eventually is what he said. That's what it was. Mercedes at Formula One boss Toto Wolff said his team's 2023 car would eventually become competitive enough. And I thought, well, I guess, there's always so many cryptic messages in these early launches, but eventually, I
Sure.
guess it's basically saying the same that I was just saying before, not very soon. But
Yeah. Well, again, it's not like they designed it to not be ready. They just built the best car they think they can. And they recognize that we're still a little bit in the woods. We still don't have our arms all the way around this new for 2022 concept of the downforce coming from the underbody of the car rather than the top. And I think we'll see a lot of the early changes to the underbody, to the floor, and to all of the aerodynamic devices that direct that air to the Venturis is what I'm trying to think of, and the diffuser at the back to make the car work.
mm-hmm. And let's. I was thinking about all this black paint. Somebody commented on YouTube. David Lawrence says the increased carbon is really the headline of the launch season. It's true. I mean, it's been every single car. But it reminds me, somewhere I was thinking about, the silver arrows that we've become so accustomed to with Mercedes. That stems back from this exact issue of the reason it was silver is because they were up against a weight limit or they wanted to try to reduce weight on the car. And so they ran the aluminum car at the time with no paint way back in the day. And that's how they came up with the silver arrows. And here we are with this new all black car. Now I know it had some flat black or matte black paint on this 23 car, but it was, they said they're saving hundreds of grams. And I don't know about you, Bob, but I learned how many grams are in a pound, and it never left my brain. I learned that back in high school physics because my physics teacher was talking about it, and he said there's 454 grams in a pound. And at that time, the Chevy 454 was a coveted engine for me. And so I've never forgot. That's how I can always remember how many grams are in a pound because it's the same number.
Nerd alert!
Yes. So yes, they were saving hundreds of grams, which is crazy to think about, right? When you're talking about a car saving hundreds of grams, but
that's not unusual. I mean, I remember working with the series back when Ford owned Jaguar. They bought Jackie Stewart's team, made it Jaguar, and they worked for weeks and weeks and weeks on trying to find a type of paint that would not only pop on television and look good, but would also be applied in a layer so thin that it would add a minimal amount of weight to the car. And after finding the lightest and thinnest paint job you can, your only option is to take the paint off and go without. And that's to a large extent what Mercedes and some of the other teams are doing. Not taking it all off, but a lot of it.
Yeah. I wrote this down. I wondered if Mercedes, and I've thought this before, is that, I know we had a bunch of changes, but Mercedes has these massive resources, right? They have this huge team with incredible people. And I wonder after so many, 8 championships. Is it just human nature to let off a little bit, and maybe this last year, coming in third and not having a great year? I mean, it's a pretty miserable year, honestly. Porpoising for them was
By
so
their
bad.
standards, yeah.
Yeah, by their standards, a miserable year. And will that just reignite that fire? And, because to me, I don't know about you, it would not surprise me at all for Mercedes to win the championship next year. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying it would not surprise me at all.
Well, no, of course not. Look at their record. I mean, they have cleared so many hurdles in the past and dealt with so many difficult situations and came up with excellent solutions, effective solutions that allowed great drivers to go on and do great things and win championships. And it's not like they forgot how to design at Mercedes or at any of these teams, really. But Mercedes, given their success in recent years, wouldn't surprise me either to see them back on top at the end of the year. Although beating Red Bull is going to remain a very, very tough thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at the speed of the car last year, crazy. All right, let's get in our last break real quick. And when we come back, we're going to talk Alpine. And the driver discussion will be a part of this one too. So you listen to your Sunday Night with Speed City. Back after these messages. Let's see. Who was it? Was it David Lawrence? Yeah, David wants to hear about Gasly versus Ocon. The sponsor story. I retweet these guys. Let me find out who they are. SPO something.
Yes, I'm getting 18 seconds of audio that we, recorded.
Oh, you're getting commercials during the break?
I do have YouTube. Did I kill that?
Oh, that's what you're getting. You're getting the audio from YouTube, Bob.
Okay, I killed it.
I was just going to say, there's some guys named Spo Motion. I don't know how
Seems
you
to have, yes.
So Spo Motion, these guys, I've started following them and retweeting them a couple times because they're keeping track of the sponsors really well, and it's stunning the number of American sponsors in Formula One now. All right, coming back.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, during the break, Bob and I were talking about, I just brought up this Twitter account called SPO Motion Analytics, SPO Motion Analytics. And I was looking at the number of American sponsors, and it's really amazing how many sponsors now. Most of the teams now are primarily sponsored by American companies. And a couple of really good stats here, like the total number of sponsors for each team. Pretty easy to guess this one, considering what Zach Brown has been good at all his life. They have the most sponsors in all of Formula One. Number of partners is really the technical, and that's McLaren with 42, then Red Bull with 38, Alfa Romeo with 38, then Ferrari 35, Aston Martin 27, Mercedes 27, Williams 20, AlphaTauri 15, and Haas at 12. But if you go through their Twitter account, you're going to find some really interesting stats about all the different sponsors and how many American sponsors, half of McLaren's 42 sponsors are from America. So, and in fact, McLaren has 21, and oh no, that's not the right stat. But nobody else is even close. So. All right. So when we went to break, I said we were going to talk Alpine, and because they had their launch last on Thursday, and they had my notes say they had some lofty goals. End of the year, Otmar said we need to be closer to third than fifth, and their plans are less DNFs, more points and podiums. That sounds like a recipe for success, Bob.
Right. Get out there, qualify on the front row, take off into the lead across the finish line, and good things will come your way. That's about as generic as you can be, I think. It's like, hit the baseball and run hard, yada, yada, yada. I don't know. I kind of expect good things out of this team this year. I think the competition between Esteban Ocon, who apparently got quite sick after the end of last season. He had a virus that he said kept him out of the gym for like 6 weeks. And it took him for a while to get back into fighting shape, but he insists he's there now. But between him and Pierre Gasly, two guys who grew up very near to each other in northern France, who were not supposed to be the best of friends, but things seem to have been fairly smooth thus far. If they can harness that energy and the competitiveness and not run into each other as teammates in that group have before, I think that team could do something special this year. Certainly challenge for that number 4 spot in the midfield.
Mm-hmm. And we'll go back to those drivers, but based on what you just said, is that I wrote down something that no other team talked about that I heard. I'm not, there could be something out there that I missed, but they said they were on such an aggressive weight reduction production. The goals they they hit all their goals, that they're below the weight limit now, and they're talking about ballast and how they can work with ballast.
Right.
So
move it around. Yeah.
Yeah, if they have been successful at that, that's a huge thing. Anytime you can make a race car lighter, that's a huge thing. It makes it faster, handle better. Everything is better when you have a lighter race car. So if they've done
that's
that,
the old rule. You want to be over budget and underweight.
yeah. I did write down some interesting notes about what they had done. The nose has changed structurally. It's flatter, and therefore it's subsequently lighter, and more part of that. And one of the biggest and most striking changes I saw was that I'd call it a gutter running around the side pods that feeds air to the rear. It's a really pronounced, when you look at, especially if you look at the car from the top, it's very pronounced. And I don't think I've seen another car that looked quite the same. We'll see how that plays out. So that ought to be interesting. There was a big change in the rear suspension. They went from pull rod to push rod, again, saying it got them a lot lighter. So many things that they focused on lightweight. They talked about a bunch of inboard suspension components that we can't really see that gave them more setup bandwidth, which I love that concept. Thinking of the first thing I think of when I think of setup bandwidth is something you brought up earlier, Bob, is there's so many different tracks and how cars struggled last year. They were great at this track and really miserable at another track. Haas F1 seems like has always struggled with that.
Yeah, and it's more pronounced by, once again, the fact that this is a very new technical envelope, if you will, for these cars. They've had one season with these aerodynamic rules, and so now they're a lot smarter than they were last year, but not as smart as they're going to be next year. So that's going to be a thing to watch. Once again, who hit the bullseye and comes off the truck fast, and who isn't, and what it is they think they need to do to get fast. This is going to be a really interesting test in Bahrain.
Reliability, I wrote down for Alpine. Reliability was definitely a problem last year, and one of the team's first goals, seems like they had water pump problems. I read where they've replaced both water and fuel pumps. It's not necessarily replaced, redesigned. So, but I want to go back to the drivers again. You talked about these guys have been, they've been friends since they were a kid, but then they had a falling out, and even apparently a falling out that went so deep that it was between the families. So, that's a pretty deep divide. But, I was thinking about, you can have all these clashes and all this bad blood, but okay, you both have made it to Formula One. Let's be bigger than all of that and make the team successful. And I think that, you would think that if anything would make them push that behind them. It was the fact that they are both on the same team, and if you're screwing up, you're screwing up the chances for the whole team. So I don't know. I just think that this is a great opportunity for them to just move on and bury the hatchet, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, we'll see who's mature enough to do that. It's it goes back to that strange position that the drivers are in. Yeah, they want to do well for the team. In fact, they want the team to finish 1-2 on the racetrack, but they don't want to be 2.
Yep.
And so it's it leads to a lot of competitiveness.
Yep. Let's see. Anything else for the Alpine car before I go to another story, Bob?
No, I've said my piece. Until I go kick the tires on the damn thing, I don't really know what I think of it. And I've said before, I don't believe anything we see in the launches anyway, because they don't want you to see any of the really trick and cool stuff. So, that's fine. We all know what the rules are, and we'll see who brings what to Bahrain.
Yep. Well, we're almost out of time, but I definitely wanted to talk about something we didn't get to talk about last week, and that is, I don't know if everybody's been following this, but Miami has announced some significant campus upgrades ahead of this race, and they're right in the middle of all of that right now. So you ought to go to the F1MiamiGP.com and check it out. They've been posting some stuff on Twitter, and they're talking about it's a major investment. They're talking about a brand new permanent paddock club. And it's a building that's being constructed above the pit garages. They're going to expand into the field of the Hard Rock Stadium, where team hospitality will be based, creating this Formula One team village. Apparently, the fake water is going to be back. I know that was there was people poking fun at that.
Why would you do that?
But it was kind of cool. A bigger fan zone. It's enhanced.
You can look down there.
Yeah. Anyway, it looks like it's going to be some good stuff. But Bob, we're out of time. Thank you, Mr. Varsha, for jumping in and helping me out today. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks to Connor Daly for picking up the phone when we called, and was happy to see him get a chance to do what he did. I love the fact that he was disappointed, because that's a race car driver, of course, with all that competitiveness. But well, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next Sunday night.